The next thing that I want to talk about is color and outlines and gradients. So now I've got all these fun shapes, maybe I want to add some color to them. So what you need to do is with your selection tool, select the shape. And I showed you over here, this is where I see my fill and the stroke. If I double click on fill, I can actually now choose a color. So I can use this slider to pick the hue, and then you can choose a tint or a tone. You can choose the vibrance of that hue by selecting in this box here. And then you hit OK. It fills the shape with that color. It's actually way too bright. I think I want to choose a darker green. Great. Same with the outline. Let's say I want to come to this eye. I select it with my selection tool. I actually don't want it to have a black outline to it anymore. So I'm going to come to the stroke and I'm actually going to go here and say none. And now it's just a white circle with no black outline. Now let's go to my octopus. Maybe it can be a kind of fleshy pink. Double click on that. Let's get into those pinky tones. Come here. It's okay. And I could give it an outline if I wanted to. Same way, double clicking. And let's see, I'll give it a red outline. Hit OK. You can see it's got a faint red border to it. If I click on it, and make sure whenever you want to edit an object and its fill and stroke, you need to make sure that object is selected with the selection tool. So I'm going to click on it, and I actually want to make the outline a bit more obvious. So now I come up here, and I see stroke, and I can go bigger. I can make that 10 points and have a really thick outline on it, or I can go smaller, teeny tiny thin red outline on it, barely visible. Come to these other shapes, and let's try gradients. So I'm going to say no to the stroke. I'm going to come to the fill, and I'm going to choose this middle box here, gradient. Now I get this whole gradient submenu right here. Notice the default gradient is a fade from white to black. If I want to change those colors, I can double click here. And let's say I want it to fade from red to black, or if I double click here, from red to blue. If I want to add more colors, I can drag my arrow here and see how it's showing me I can add a few more. Now I add another point, double click. Maybe I want that to be a light blue in the middle there. And I can even drag these around. There's other fun things you can do with gradients. You can set the opacity of each of those points. So let's say I actually put the middle opacity down to 30%. Spread out a little bit more. And now notice when I drag this on top of my dragon, I can actually see the dragon a little bit through the middle of my gradient, but not through either end of it. So that's just messing with opacity. I can also turn it from a linear gradient into a radial gradient. Now it's a circle. I can change the interior of my circle to a different color, just like I did before. And notice these sliders do the same thing as they did before, and the middle is going to be transparent. So there's lots of fun things you can do with that. There's even a super fancy freeform gradient. If I come in here, I can edit different points. I can move them around, and I can edit the spread of those points. You can add more of them. So I can really make a gradient specific on an object. And again, set up different opacities for each of those. Let's go back to my selection tool and show you when I bring that over an object that it's transparent in just that one part that I brought the opacity down on. If you ever lose this window and you want to edit a gradient, make sure your object's selected, go to Window, gradient. And then it'll pop up again, and you can choose Edit Gradient and keep tweaking. Close that out. So again, with my heart, I can have a gradient on it. I can have it be linear, radial, or freeform. And I can even put a gradient on the stroke. So if I come to the stroke and select gradient, it's hard to see it, but let's say I make that a wider stroke. And I put just a color fill on the heart, and now you can see that the outline actually has a gradient on it. So you can do a lot of fun things with that. There's some tweaking you can do with how that goes along the edge. You can have the gradient apply within the stroke, or along the stroke, or kind of on the edges of the stroke to create more of a border. Notice if I change this from blue to green, that's what my edges look like now. And you can go really crazy with this stuff. You probably won't need gradients just now, but I thought I'd show you in case you want to play with it. I also want to quickly show you, even with fill colors, you can tweak the opacity of them. So let me get out of this and notice opacity up here now. I can take that down a bit more transparent. Let's say I group him all together so he moves as a unit. And if I put him over my octopus, you can see he's got a bit of transparency now. Notice my opacity looks like it's 100%. That's because I've grouped this all, so even though parts of it aren't 100% opaque, it's going to register the whole unit as fully opaque. If I want to go back and edit an individual part in something I grouped, but I don't want to ungroup it, I can double click in. Notice this top bar appears now, and what I'm in is isolation mode, where I'm only editing the things within that group, and now I can select individual objects and adjust them. If I want to get back out of this and work on the octopus, I can either click on that until that bar goes away, or I can use this arrow to exit out and get back to my overall shape. Okay, that was really quickly just working with colors, fills, and gradients. Hope you enjoyed.